Princess Liara stood on the balcony of her palace, gazing at the two suns of her planet sinking below the horizon. The sky glowed orange and purple, a perfect reflection of the chaos in her mind. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a crystal communication device. For centuries, her family had ruled the galactic kingdom of Aranthia, a vast empire of many star systems. But now, everything was at risk. A law older than any living being in the galaxy demanded that the princess marry before her 22nd birthday. Failure to do so would strip her of the crown, leaving the kingdom vulnerable to rival factions and political schemers. Liara was only 19. She had tried to find a suitable match among the noble families of the empire, but every alliance seemed hollow, every potential partner more concerned with power than the well-being of the kingdom. Tears threatened to fall as she whispered to herself, "I cannot lose the crown. I cannot let my people suffer." Her advisors, tall and serious alien figures, with translucent skin and multiple eyes, stood silently behind her. They were skilled, wise, and loyal, but their advice offered no comfort. "I've tried everything," Liara said, her voice breaking, "and the council will not wait for me. If I do not marry, my crown will be taken from me." One of her advisors, a thin, silver-skinned elder named Soren, stepped forward. His voice was calm, measured. "Princess, there is one possibility, though it is unorthodox." Liara turned sharply. "Unorthodox?" she repeated. Her heart pounded. Any chance, no matter how strange, was worth considering. "The law allows for the selection of a spouse outside the traditional noble lines," Soren explained. "A human, an inhabitant of a distant young planet called Earth, could be proposed. The council would not object if he proved himself worthy." Liara's eyes widened. "Humans? The council barely recognizes them as intelligent beings. They are considered unpredictable, even primitive." "Exactly," Soren replied. "Unpredictable beings can offer qualities that our rigid laws do not anticipate. They think differently. They solve problems differently. Your Highness, if you send a call, a human may respond." Liara's hands shook as she held the communicator. She hesitated. To marry a human would be shocking. No royal had ever considered it. Yet, the more she thought, the more she realized she had no other choice. If she did nothing, the empire could collapse, and her people would suffer. With determination, she activated the device. "This is Princess Liara of Aranthia," she said, her voice strong despite her fear. "I am seeking a willing partner to marry me. My kingdom depends on it. Please, if you are capable, respond." Far across the galaxy, on a small blue-green planet called Earth, Captain Elias Ray sat in the command room of his exploration vessel, staring at a blinking light on his screen. He had been mapping a distant star system when a strange, unsolicited message appeared, his brow furrowed as he read the text. "Princess Liara of Aranthia requests a willing human partner. Your response may determine the future of her kingdom." Elias blinked. He was no diplomat. He was an explorer, a man who enjoyed seeing new worlds, solving problems, and testing his skills. But a royal proposal? From a galactic empire? It sounded absurd. Yet, something about the message intrigued him. He could sense urgency, desperation, and perhaps sincerity. Humans were naturally curious, he reminded himself, and something told him this was more than a prank. After a moment of thought, he pressed a button. "I accept," he said aloud, almost laughing at the absurdity. Then he typed a careful reply. "I am willing. Tell me how I may serve." The response was almost instant. The communicator shimmered, forming a holographic image of Princess Liara. She was stunning, with bright violet eyes and dark hair that fell in waves over her shoulders. But more than her beauty, her expression held desperation and resolve. You are human?" she asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and hope. I am, Elias replied. I am Elias Ray, an explorer from Earth. You said the kingdom depends on this? Liara nodded, swallowing her fear. Yes. If I do not marry soon, the law will strip me of the crown. The empire may fall into chaos. I have tried every noble, every diplomat, and every potential ally, but none could meet the council's expectations. Please, help me. Elias leaned back, rubbing his chin. He had dealt with dangerous situations before, but never like this. And yet, he felt a strange sense of duty. Humans had always adapted, had always survived against greater odds. Why not here? Very well, he said. I will come. But you must understand, I do not know your laws, your customs, or your politics. I only know people. And I know humans. I can think, act, and fight when necessary. Will that be enough? Liara's eyes glimmered with tears. It is more than enough. It may be the only hope we have. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. Elias's ship, equipped with human technology, was fitted for interstellar travel. Liara's advisors watched nervously as he studied their systems, asking questions they did not expect. He solved engineering problems in ways they considered reckless, but each solution worked. Finally, the day came. Elias stood on the launch platform, looking up at the sky streaked with the colors of their twin suns. Liara joined him, dressed in ceremonial robes that shimmered with the patterns of her planet. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. She was a princess of a great empire. He was a human from a small, untested world. And yet, there was understanding in their eyes. Are you ready? Liara asked. Elias smiled, with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced countless unknowns. As ready as a human can be, he said. With that, his ship ignited, lifting off into the vastness of space. Princess Liara watched until it disappeared into the stars, praying that her hope and her trust in a human was not misplaced. Somewhere across the galaxy, a human was on his way to change her world forever, and perhaps in the process, prove why humans, unpredictable and daring, were a force no empire could ignore. Elias Ray's ship glided through the thin upper atmosphere of Aranthia, leaving trails of shimmering light in its wake. Below, the planet's floating cities sparkled like jewels against the deep blue oceans and sprawling green continents. It was a sight no human had ever seen before, and Elias could not help but marvel at it. Yet, his mind was focused. He was here to meet a princess and help her save an empire, a task that sounded impossible even to him. As the ship landed in the Grand Royal Courtyard, the air shimmered with the energy of advanced technology. Hovering guards, drones, and ceremonial constructs watched every movement. Elias stepped down carefully, adjusting the human-made suit that protected him from unknown atmospheric conditions. His heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. Princess. Liara waited near the palace steps. She was taller than she had seemed in the hologram, her violet eyes sharp and intelligent. The ceremonial robes she wore caught the light, casting a soft glow around her. For a moment she simply stared at him, trying to measure his worth. Elias, for his part, gave a small bow, a human gesture of respect, simple and sincere. "Welcome to Aranthia," Liara said, her voice steady but tinged with anxiety. "I am Princess Liara. You have answered my call, and I am grateful." "I am Elias Ray, from Earth," he replied. "I came because you asked for help. But I must be honest. I know nothing about your politics, your laws, or your traditions. I only know people and I know humans. That is what I bring." Liara studied him carefully. Her advisors whispered among themselves, their voices low and worried. Humans were known in some corners of the galaxy as clever, yes, but unpredictable, reckless, and sometimes dangerous. Could she trust this one? Could he truly help her? Soren, the silver-skinned elder, stepped forward. Princess, if I may, humans operate differently. Their strength is not in their technology or rank, but in their creativity. Do not underestimate him, or overestimate our ability to control him. Liara nodded, then turned back to Elias. We must begin at once, she said. The Council of the Galactic Law is watching closely. If they find fault in my choice of spouse, my crown could be revoked immediately. You must prove yourself capable. Elias raised an eyebrow. And how exactly do I do that? Liara led him into the palace, its halls glowing with crystalline light and lined with alien art that seemed to move subtly when observed. She explained the tests and trials he would face, diplomatic negotiations, combat simulations, strategic games, and demonstrations of loyalty. All were designed for advanced alien minds, beings far more experienced than a human. And you expect me to pass them? Elias asked, a half-smile on his face. Liara shrugged. I do not know. That is why I asked a human. You might fail, but you might succeed where others would falter. That is what I need. The first trial came the next day. Elias was brought into a large chamber, walls lined with holographic projectors showing countless moving star systems. Here, he was to demonstrate strategy and leadership by guiding a virtual fleet through a simulated galactic conflict. Aliens around him watched closely, their multiple eyes narrowing in judgment. Elias studied the simulation. The rules were complicated, almost impossibly so. But instead of panicking, he observed patterns, tested minor moves, and adapted quickly. He made decisions no alien strategist would have tried, combining intuition and improvisation. By the end, the fleet had won the simulation not through brute strength, but by clever positioning and timing. The observers murmured in astonishment. None had expected a human to solve the problem so elegantly. Even Liara's advisors looked impressed, though. They hid it behind polite gestures. Next came the diplomacy test. Elias was sent to negotiate with an alien faction known for being rigid, logical, and highly suspicious of outsiders. The faction demanded concessions that could weaken Aranthia politically. Other candidates would have tried to match their logic. Exactly, risking failure. But Elias spoke plainly, honestly, and with humor. He offered compromises humans might call simple fairness, and yet they were surprisingly effective. By the end of the negotiation, both sides reached a mutually beneficial agreement, leaving the alien faction reluctantly admiring his approach. Liara watched from above, feeling a mix of relief and admiration. Elias's human traits, creativity, honesty, adaptability, were succeeding where traditional alien methods might fail. For the first time, she imagined a future where her kingdom could thrive with this human at her side. The final test of the day was physical. Elias entered a chamber filled with shifting obstacles, traps, and combat droids. He had no alien technology to rely on, only his wits, reflexes, and human strength. He dodged, climbed, and improvised, using the environment cleverly to overcome each challenge. By the end, he stood panting but victorious, earning a rare nod of approval from the supervising alien general. That evening, Liara approached him privately, in her garden, where bioluminescent plants glowed softly under the twin moons. "You did well today," she said quietly. "Better than anyone expected. You are extraordinary." Elias shrugged, smiling tiredly. "I did what humans do. We adapt. We find solutions. I didn't even know half the rules you expect me to follow, and yet I succeeded." Liara laughed softly. "And that is why I sent for a human. Because humans are unpredictable. They can succeed where no one else can. Perhaps, this is exactly what Aranthia needs. Elias looked at her, curiosity and something warmer stirring in his chest. And what do you need me to do next? Learn our ways, she replied, and continue to surprise us all. For the first time, Liara felt hope, not only for the crown, but for the future of her empire. And somewhere deep inside, Elias began to realize that this strange, beautiful world and the determined princess who ruled it might change him as well. The stars above Aranthia shimmered like promises, and a human and a princess began a partnership that would challenge traditions, defy expectations, and perhaps reshape the galaxy itself. The morning sun of Aranthia rose over the floating palace, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Captain Elias Ray awoke to the soft hum of alien machinery, the palace alive with energy and purpose. Today, his trials would grow more difficult, stretching his mind, body, and courage to the limit. He had passed the first day with cleverness and ingenuity, but the council's tests were far from over. Princess Liara met him in the grand hall. Her expression was unreadable as if carefully weighing each move he might make. Elias, she said, today's trials will not just test your mind or your reflexes. They will test your judgment, your morality, and your ability to act under pressure. Are you ready? Elias straightened. I am ready. I may not understand all your rules, but I understand humans. That is enough to begin. Liara gave him a faint smile. We shall see. The first trial was a test of leadership. A simulated crisis had been created. A neighboring system faced disaster, and Elias had to make strategic decisions to save lives while maintaining political alliances. Holographic projections of entire star systems floated before him, each planet, moon, and fleet represented by glowing symbols. Alien observers watched silently, their many eyes sharp and critical. Elias studied the projections. He quickly realized that traditional strategies, those of alien diplomats, would fail. They relied on rigid calculations and predictable patterns. Humans, however, thrived in chaos. Elias began making decisions based on intuition and empathy, predicting how different factions would react emotionally, not just logically. Hours passed, yet he did not tire. He negotiated, adjusted, and guided the simulation to a successful outcome. The observers whispered among themselves, astonished. A human, they murmured, had achieved what their most skilled strategists could not. The second trial was moral. A group of alien scientists had created a scenario where a valuable resource could be secured by sacrificing a small population of synthetic beings. The council expected Elias to follow logic and preserve the Empire's interests at any cost. Elias stared at the simulation, his jaw tight. I cannot do that, he said finally. I do not believe true leadership is measured by convenience or power. Sacrificing innocence, even synthetic, is wrong. There must be another way. Liara watched silently, admiration growing in her eyes. No one else had spoken like that. Humans were unpredictable, yes. But in this unpredictability lay courage and morality. Using creativity, Elias devised a plan that preserved the synthetic population and still secured the resource. When the trial ended, the council's holographic overseer paused, silent for several moments. Then a slow nod acknowledged his success. The third trial was physical, but unlike the simple obstacle course he had faced before. He was led into a vast chamber filled with alien warriors, each faster, stronger, and more disciplined than any human could be. Elias was to spar with them, demonstrating combat skill, agility, and endurance. Elias's approach was not to fight like them. He moved differently, unpredictably, using their speed and strength against them. He ducked, dodged, and redirected energy in ways the aliens had never seen. One by one, they conceded defeat, impressed by the humans' ingenuity. Liara observed, from above, her heart pounding with pride. Elias was not just surviving, he was excelling in ways that defied expectations. Every step, every decision he made reflected not brute force or rigid logic, but human adaptability and courage. After the trials, Elias was exhausted but unbroken. Liara met him in the palace gardens, where soft lights glimmered among the bioluminescent trees. "You have done extraordinarily well," she said. "The council expected a human to fail, to stumble. Yet you have passed every trial, not because you are stronger or smarter, but because you are human." Elias smiled tiredly. "I did what humans do. We face the unknown, make choices, and adapt. That is what I bring. Our way of thinking. Our heart." Liara's eyes softened. "And it is enough. More than enough, perhaps. I have begun to see why humans are feared and respected in the galaxy. Not for power, not for technology, but for courage, creativity, and heart." Just as they spoke, an urgent alarm rang through the palace. Soren appeared, his translucent skin reflecting alarm. "Princess Captain, there is news. A faction of nobles is attempting to challenge your right to the throne. They claim your marriage to a human is invalid and have petitioned the council to intervene immediately." Liara's heart sank. Political schemers moved faster than she anticipated. "Then we have no time," she said. "Elias, they will not stop until they remove my crown. Can you help me?" Elias straightened, his human resolve shining. "We adapt, we plan, we act. Let's show them what humans can do." The palace became a hive of preparation. Liara's advisors argued, planning defenses and diplomatic maneuvers, while Elias calmly observed, suggesting simple yet brilliant tactics that surprised even the most experienced counselors. He coordinated human logic with alien technology, creating solutions no one had considered. As night fell, Liara and Elias stood together on the palace balcony once more. The twin moons cast silver light across the floating city, and the stars shimmered above. "Tomorrow," Liara said, "we face not just trials, but those who would see my crown fall. Will you stand with me?" Elias nodded firmly. "Always. Humans do not back down when the odds are against them. We find a way, even when it seems impossible. I will stand with you, Princess, no matter what comes." Liara smiled, a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time, she felt that hope was not a distant dream. With this human by her side, the Empire might survive, and perhaps even thrive in ways she had never imagined. The stars above Aranthia glimmered like silent witnesses, watching a human and a princess preparing to face trials that could decide the fate of a kingdom. In the midst of uncertainty and danger, a bond of trust began to form, a bond that might just change the galaxy forever. The floating city of Aranthia shimmered under the light of its twin suns, but inside the palace, tension simmered like a hidden storm. Princess Liara paced the grand hallway, her ceremonial robes rustling with each step. The council's warning from the previous night had set the palace on high alert. A faction of nobles, unwilling to accept a human as the princess's partner, was plotting to discredit both her and Elias. Elias watched quietly from a nearby balcony, his human instincts analyzing the situation. "They think this is about law and tradition," he said softly. "But it's really about fear. They fear change, and they fear unpredictability." Liara stopped pacing and looked at him. "And what do you propose we do?" Elias smiled faintly. "We use what humans always use: strategy, observation, and a bit of boldness. We don't fight them on their terms. We make them play by ours." The first step was intelligence. Elias, unfamiliar with the palace's internal politics, began observing the nobles discreetly. He noticed subtle alliances forming, whispers behind closed doors, and coded messages passed between attendants. While the palace guards saw him as merely human curiosity, Elias's sharp eyes caught patterns no one else noticed. Liara, he said later, pointing to a series of interactions between two of the council members. They're planning to present forged evidence to the Law Council tomorrow. They'll claim your choice of spouse violates tradition and attempt to strip your crown in a public hearing. Liara's violet eyes widened. Tomorrow? That's less than a day away. What can we do? Elias leaned back, calm as ever. We prepare a counter. We gather proof, witnesses, and our own strategy. We make sure the council sees the truth before they are misled. Together, they began the night-long preparation. Liara's advisors were initially skeptical, unsure whether to follow a human's plan, but Elias's logic was precise and effective. He suggested simple measures that leveraged human ingenuity, arranging discreet surveillance of the nobles, preparing direct testimony from impartial witnesses, and highlighting Liara's record of wise, just leadership. When dawn broke, the council chambers were a tense storm of anticipation. Hollow screens projected symbols of the empire, while nobles whispered, their eyes sharp with suspicion and malice. Elias and Liara entered together, their presence drawing immediate attention. Humans were rare enough that most council members stared openly, curious and wary. The nobles moved first. They presented falsified documents, arguing that the princess's choice of a human violated a centuries-old law. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Liara stood straight, holding her composure, while Elias quietly observed. Then he acted. Unlike the rigid formalities expected, he spoke plainly, directly addressing the council with honesty and clarity. "Esteemed council members," he began, "the documents presented here are forged. I have investigated them and traced their origins to members of this assembly. Princess Liara has acted within the law. I have no allegiance to your political games, only to truth and to the well-being of this kingdom." A hush fell over the chamber. No human had ever addressed the council in such a direct manner. Some nobles bristled, unaccustomed to being confronted without ceremony or fear. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the boldness and clarity. Liara stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. "I will not allow my kingdom to be threatened by deceit or fear. Elias is not just a human, he is a partner, someone who has proven his loyalty, judgment, and courage. If my crown is taken because of lies, it is not law that fails, but the empire itself." The council's holographic overseers paused, analyzing the arguments. Then came the questioning. The nobles pressed Elias, attempting to confuse him with complex legal precedents and obscure traditions. But he remained calm, answering plainly, using logic and human intuition to expose contradictions in their arguments. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Witnesses confirmed his account. Evidence of forgery was presented. The council members, even those skeptical of humans, could not deny the clarity of the truth. By the end of the hearing, the faction of nobles was silenced, their plot uncovered and discredited. Outside the chambers, Liara and Elias walked together in the palace gardens, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants reflecting their triumph. "You were incredible," Liara said, her voice full of admiration. "You faced them without fear, without deception, and you succeeded where even the most experienced diplomats might have failed." Elias shrugged modestly. "I did what humans do. We see problems clearly, act decisively, and trust in honesty and reason. Sometimes it's all you need." Liara laughed softly, a sound of relief and joy. And yet, it is exactly why I sent for a human. Because humans do not follow tradition blindly. You see possibilities that others ignore. You are unpredictable. And that unpredictability, Elias said with a small smile, is exactly why we survive. But even in victory, the palace remained tense. The nobles who had failed would not accept defeat quietly. Whispers of revenge circulated through corridors, and shadowy figures observed Elias and Liara from afar. The human and the princess knew that while one battle was won, the war for the crown and for the stability of the empire was far from over. That night, as they looked out over the floating city, Liara rested her hand lightly on Elias's arm. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we must remain vigilant. Your presence here has saved the crown, but the council and the nobles will test us again. We cannot falter." Elias nodded, eyes fixed on the stars. Humans do not falter easily. We adapt, we persevere, and we fight when necessary. Whatever comes, we will face it together. For the first time, Liara allowed herself to believe, not just in Elias, but in the power of humanity. In this unpredictable human, she saw hope for her kingdom, hope for her crown, and perhaps hope for a future neither of them could yet imagine. Above them, the twin moons of Aranthia shone like guardians, witnessing a human and a princess as they prepared to defend the throne, defy expectations, and change the course of the galaxy itself. The day dawned pale and quiet over Aranthia, but inside the palace, tension hung thick as fog. The council had called for another series of tests. This time, the trials were not only to prove Elias's skill, but also to test the strength of the bond between him and Princess Liara. The Empire's leaders wanted to see if their union was genuine, or merely a convenient arrangement. Liara stood beside Elias in the great hall, her hands folded before her. "They will try to separate us," she whispered. "They will test not just your ability, but whether we can work together under pressure." Elias gave her a reassuring glance. "We've faced impossible odds before. Humans rely on trust and cooperation. That is how we survive. If we stay together, we can face whatever they put before us." Their first challenge was diplomatic. Two neighboring star systems were in dispute over resources and trade routes. Elias and Liara were tasked with mediating an agreement in less than a single galactic day. The alien envoys, proud and skeptical, watched them with sharp, unblinking eyes. At first, the discussion was tense. Aliens spoke in complex rules, insisting on rigid fairness and technical details that could take months to resolve. Elias studied their behavior and noticed subtle signs of fear and hope, emotions the council expected humans to ignore. He whispered, a suggestion to Liara, who nodded and took a different approach than she had ever tried in formal diplomacy. Together they spoke plainly and honestly, appealing to shared needs rather than abstract laws. Liara expressed the kingdom's desire for peace and stability, while Elias offered creative solutions that neither side had considered. Slowly, the envoys relaxed. Agreements were made, compromises reached, and respect earned. The council observers nodded, some reluctantly. As it became clear, humans and their unpredictable ways could achieve what centuries of alien tradition could not. The second trial was physical, but far more complex than anything Elias had faced before. He and Liara were required to navigate a labyrinth filled with shifting obstacles, holographic traps, and simulated emergencies. The labyrinth represented crises across the Empire, each test designed to see how they would react, individually and as a team. Elias moved first, analyzing the patterns and predicting potential hazards. Liara followed closely, her trust in him growing with each step. At one point, a trap activated, forcing her to leap across a widening chasm. Elias reached out instinctively, catching her hand just in time. "Thank you," Liara said, her eyes meeting his. In that moment, she realized their partnership went beyond duty. It was built on trust, courage, and shared purpose. They navigated the labyrinth successfully, using both human ingenuity and royal intuition. By the end, even the council members who doubted humans could not deny the effectiveness of their teamwork. The final trial was perhaps the most demanding, a test of ethics, loyalty, and courage under fire. Elias and Liara were placed in a simulated scenario where they had to make decisions affecting thousands of lives. Every choice carried consequences. The council expected hesitation, mistakes, or compromise of principles. Elias spoke first. "We act with integrity. We consider everyone affected, and we make decisions that preserve life, honor, and trust." Liara added, "We will face the consequences together. No one is more important than our people, and no one is above the law or morality." The scenario tested them relentlessly. Crises arose simultaneously, natural disasters, political threats, and urgent requests for intervention. But Elias's human creativity, combined with Liara's wisdom and authority, allowed them to solve problems as they arose. They communicated effortlessly, anticipating each other's thoughts and decisions. By the time the trial ended, both were exhausted. Yet the council's observers were silent, stunned by what they had witnessed. For the first time, they had seen a human and a royal working in perfect harmony, not out of fear, obligation, or law, but from mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Later, in the quiet of the palace garden, Liara turned to Elias. "You have done more than prove yourself to the council. You have shown me what it means to trust and rely on another being completely. I never thought it could feel like this." Elias looked at her with a small, warm smile. "Humans build trust through action, through courage, and through honesty. You have done the same. That is why we succeeded. Alone, either of us might have failed, but together, we are stronger than any law or tradition." Liara's violet eyes softened. "I believe you," she said, "not just for the trials, but for the future. If this bond is true, it will protect the kingdom more than any law ever could." Elias placed a hand lightly on hers. "We are stronger together," he said. "And the galaxy is unpredictable. But so are humans. And sometimes, unpredictability is the greatest strength of all." That evening, the palace was quiet except for the gentle glow of bioluminescent trees. Liara and Elias walked together beneath the twin moons, talking about plans, dreams, and the uncertain future of the empire. Both knew that challenges would continue, but their trust and partnership had been forged in fire. They were no longer simply princess and human. They were allies, companions, and equals. The council would continue to test them, and the faction of nobles who opposed their union would not give up easily. But Elias and Liara had discovered something far more powerful than laws or tradition, a human bond that could withstand any trial, defy any expectation, and guide a kingdom through its darkest hours. Above them, the stars of Aranthia sparkled, like witnesses to a promise that humanity, with its courage, creativity, and heart, could thrive even in the most alien, rigid corners of the galaxy. And in that shining light, the princess and the human captain found not only hope for the empire, but hope for each other. The grand hall of Aranthia's palace shimmered with light from hundreds of hovering crystal chandeliers. Today was the day the council would make the final judgment. All factions, nobles, and alien delegates had gathered to witness whether Princess Liara's choice, a human, Captain Elias Ray, would be accepted or rejected. The air was thick with anticipation. Elias stood beside Liara, calm yet alert. The trials had ended, but the stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move, one misstep in judgment, could cost Liara her crown and plunge the Empire into chaos. Liara turned to him. "No matter what happens, we face this together," she said softly. Elias nodded. "We always have, and we always will." The council's leader, an imposing figure with translucent, shifting skin, rose from the center of the chamber. "Princess Liara," the voice resonated through the hall, "and Captain Elias Rey, human of Earth, you have completed the trials. The council will now deliberate your worthiness as partners and your right to secure the crown of Aranthia." The chamber fell silent. Delegates murmured softly among themselves. The nobles who had opposed the union watched with suspicion, their eyes narrowed and lips pressed tightly together. One by one, the council members presented questions, challenging Elias's understanding of Aranthian law, his loyalty, and his ability to act in the Empire's best interest. They questioned his human unpredictability, suggesting it could endanger the kingdom. Elias listened carefully, then responded not with arrogance, but with clarity and honesty. He spoke of humanity's strengths, courage, adaptability, and ingenuity. He explained how his decisions in the trials had balanced logic with morality, risk with compassion, and strategy with trust. "I am human," he said plainly, "and humans succeed where others fail because we adapt, think creatively, and act with heart. I do not claim to know all of your laws, but I know what is right. I know loyalty, courage, and justice. I have acted for the good of Princess Liara and the people of Aranthia. That is my promise." Liara added her own words, strong and unwavering. "Elias has proven himself not only capable but honorable. He has faced trials designed to test the strongest and most cunning of our people. Together, we act as partners, bound by trust and purpose, not fear or law alone. If our union is accepted, it will bring strength, clarity, and unity to this kingdom." The council fell into quiet deliberation. For the first time in centuries, they debated not only rules and tradition, but also courage, partnership, and the power of human spirit. Whispers spread through the hall. A human and a princess had changed the discussion entirely. Finally, the council leader raised a hand, signaling silence. After careful deliberation, the council acknowledges the union of Princess Liara and Captain Elias Rey. The crown of Aranthia remains with Princess Liara, and Captain Elias Rey is recognized as a worthy partner in the governance of the Empire. Their partnership is accepted as lawful and honorable. A wave of relief and astonishment swept through the hall. Liara's eyes shone with tears of joy, and she turned to Elias. "We did it," she whispered. Elias smiled, his hand brushing hers. "No, Liara, you did it. I only followed where courage and trust led." The nobles who had opposed them were silent, unable to deny the truth. Some bowed their heads in reluctant respect, while others lingered in thought, realizing that the human's unpredictability and morality had secured what years of political maneuvering could not. A celebration was held in the palace gardens, where bioluminescent trees glowed softly under the twin moons. Aliens of many species, diplomats, and citizens of Aranthia gathered to witness a rare event: the marriage of a princess and a human, an alliance that symbolized unity, hope, and the triumph of spirit over fear. Liara and Elias stood side by side, hands clasped, as the ceremony began. Liara's voice echoed through the garden. "Today, we honor not only our union but the strength of trust, courage, and partnership. May this crown symbolize not tradition alone, but the power of heart, mind, and human spirit." Elias, speaking with gentle confidence, added, "Humans have always faced impossible odds, and we have survived because we act with courage, creativity, and honor. Let this union be proof that even in the vastness of the galaxy, humanity can thrive, inspire, and protect what is just. As the ceremony ended, fireworks of glowing energy arched across the sky, reflecting off the floating cities. Citizens cheered, diplomats applauded, and the stars themselves seemed to shimmer brighter, as if witnessing the moment of history. That night, Liara and Elias walked together along the palace terraces, their hands entwined. "I cannot imagine this empire without you," Liara said softly. Elias looked at her with warmth and determination. "And I cannot imagine my life without this kingdom, or without you. Together we can face anything." Above them, the twin moons of Aranthia hung, in silent watch, casting silver light on the floating cities and the palace that had seen centuries of tradition. The empire had survived, strengthened by the unexpected alliance of a human and a princess. In the days that followed, Aranthia entered a new era. Policies were reformed, alien and human ideas blended, and the kingdom prospered. The citizens marveled at the courage of Princess Liara and her human partner, whose partnership proved that ingenuity, morality, and trust could surpass any rigid law or ancient tradition. Elias, once an outsider from a distant blue planet, became a respected figure across the galaxy. He demonstrated that humans, though often underestimated, could solve problems, inspire change, and protect life with unparalleled determination. Princess Liara, now secure in her crown and confident in her kingdom's future, looked at Elias and smiled. "You have not only saved the crown," she said, "but you have shown everyone why humans are extraordinary." Elias laughed softly. "I did what humans do. We face challenges, adapt, and never give up. Sometimes that is all it takes to change the galaxy." And under the twin moons of Aranthia, with stars shining like 1,000 eyes of witness, a princess and a human captain began a new chapter, not just in their lives, but for an entire empire. Together, they proved that courage, trust, and the unpredictable human spirit could shape the future of the galaxy itself. The crown was safe, the empire was united, and the human who had answered a desperate plea from across the stars had become a symbol of hope, ingenuity, and the extraordinary power of humanity.